think I saw Lisa hop in. All right. I think we'll go ahead. So what'll happen is with KCM, oh, Julie, I see Julie there. She's talking about Julie.
Sorry. Good morning. I'm Julie Adams. I work in the eastern part of the state. I'm also a regional consultant with the KCM, and I'm very excited. I love working with teachers and the passion and the creativity that they have. So I'm very excited to be able to be a part of this journey with you all.
All right, fantastic. So we've got some other KCM folks. They'll be in and out throughout the time with us over the next 2 days or 4 days. So one of the things that we're going to do is to study the research. And so thank you to those of you who diligently got your highlighter and your pen out, and you marked up your Principles to Action book for maybe a second or third or fourth time. But here's what I find about reading and rereading a book. I see something new each time. And so in this one, I was really enjoying the kind of the math teaching practices, and then of course that section on equity and professionalism. We'll be studying indeed those mathematics teaching practices and thinking about this icon and how it is interconnected. So that's going to be an important part. We're also going to be studying those standards for mathematical practice and how are the teaching practices and the standards for mathematical practices, how are they together? How did they make some shifts? I felt like our reading out of our coaching book really helped me to think about those shifts. And then more importantly, we need those scaled by kind of that your classroom is really a model for both the standards for mathematical practice and what the students are doing and those mathematical teaching practices. We, of course, are going to really study the Leading for Mathematical Proficiency framework. As I said in the interviews, I'm not looking for you to go out of the classroom. That is one of the things that's unique about you folks. Every single one of you have a classroom assignment. That was and kind of one of the most important qualities of the Kentucky Math Teacher Leaders is that we were doing grassroots, organic, boots on the ground math leadership so that you can walk the walk and talk the talk. But this Leading for Mathematical Proficiency framework, we will be studying. Dr. Bay Williams will be with us tomorrow at 10 o'clock. So let's take a look at that Kentucky Math Transformation. This is the overview. Our goal is really to dive deep into each of those 4 categories. To this virtual session, we will be working in pedagogy, content, and leadership. Again, we will have a focus on equity when we have our special speakers that'll come to us during several of our Zoom sessions. So I want to start by kind of continuing our conversation about what do world-class achievers do. I hope you enjoyed the videos that we had last week with regards to grit. So one of the things I'd like for you to do is to go ahead and unmute, and for, I'm thinking maybe 2 or 3, maybe even 4 of you guys to talk to me about what was it that you enjoyed, either about the grit videos or about Principal Caffelli's video with regards to trying to determine your leadership identity. And I have someone who would unmute and talk about what they were thinking about in regards to those videos I sent last week.
I'll go, Kelly.
Do it.
And I even responded to one of the videos to you. That first video on Monday, you know, this past spring was hard. It was a hard spring. And so watching that first video, I was like, okay, I am pumped up to teach again. Like, I can make a difference. I can do something. And then I sent it to my whole teaching team at Kirksville. And then I watched the next video the next day, and I thought, at the very end where she's talking about how it's so much easier with a team than it is to do individually. And then I thought, okay, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing right now, because not only do I have my school team, I now have this team that's around the whole state of Kentucky. So it just sort of was like a deep breath, like, okay, everything's going to be okay. I've got people to help. So it was uplifting for me in a time when I really needed it.
Leslie, you've hit the head, kind of the nail on the head with regards to this group. I want you to get up when it's time to be with your Kentucky math teacher leaders, and I want you to say, oh my goodness, they're going to give me life. They're going to stoke my fire, and really have me think about this, because this job is hard. Others with reflection regarding your videos from last week?
I think that I would just add upon that the same thing. One of the things that stuck out in my mind, she said, whenever you are around people of grit, you become grittier. And I think that's exactly what we're doing. And that saying has just stuck out in my mind ever since she said it. And I'm so thankful that I get to be around people of grit, because I'm going to become grittier. So
That's great. Heather Stevens from Elliott County.
And to piggyback off of what everybody else has said, I don't know if anyone else is feeling this, but I got through the spring and I got better as I went. And then I thought, oh, I don't ever want to do this again. And then it looks like we're going to have to do this again. So it was nice to get like a little, okay, this is not the worst thing that's ever happened, and we can have grit and we can pull ourselves together and make the best of it. Like, just, I needed that in that moment, just like Leslie said. So thanks for that.
So mine's not really about the teacher side of it, but more of looking at fostering growth mindset in the classroom. When I'm trying to do that with my students, and really in the deep, dark back of my mind, I always have this idea of, I have students and even complete families as their children come through that always excel in mathematics, regardless of what poor job I do of trying to help them. And so always, this video where she talks about the talent provides a lens where I can kind of make sense of that. And I think I can communicate that with my students as well, that I liked how she talked about that talent is there. And so that kind of helps take care of that. We're not all starting at the same place, but we can all reach a given spot with that effort that can turn into skill, and then from skill with effort to turn into achievement. So anyhow, I enjoyed the lens of the talent idea to help me kind of feel better about some of the deep, dark ideas I have, because I really want to foster growth mindset, but I do see students that are better at mathematics from the beginning when I first see them. So that was a takeaway I had from the video.
Absolutely. Sheila, you give me that opportunity to make the parallel to us as teachers. So on this video call right now are 47 of the best math teachers in the entire state of Kentucky. And so I want you to begin to have that identity, that's where, that's who you are. So that's where you need to see yourself as that. Also, you have a certain talent as a math educator, and with the effort that you're going to give at Kentucky Math Teacher Leaders, you're going to increase your skill, and then your skill times some more effort in the implementation to try to scale it to those around you are going to give you that achievement. So the parallels, I love that you guys go back and forth between the parallels with the students in your classroom, and then I'm always going to bring you back to the parallel of this group. This group has everyone from doctors of educational curriculum and instruction and instructional specialists to those that are new in the journey and someone in your district saw potential in you. And so we have all this range, but the effort that we give for Kentucky Math Teacher Leaders is going to give you your skill. Pam, can I tell you something? Teresa Plank, can I tell you that Teresa Plank is having trouble trying to get in? So can you kind of
sent her an email trying to communicate with her.
Yeah. Let me see if I can forward that to you, but I think it's in the, I think it's in, thank you for letting me talk. I'm sorry, y'all, for letting me talk. sideways. But if you'll look in the communication document, her email is there, but I'll try to forward it to you right now. Okay, and one more person to share with regards to those videos, because I've saved one more. This is we're gonna watch one more video that's gonna lead us into getting into our teams.
I'm sorry. I don't
Oh, go ahead, Amber.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead. And so the grit video is one of my absolute favorite. And I think touching on what the lady before me talked about, of just seeing people who come into the classroom who are at a different level or maybe excel a little bit more than others. I always talk to my kids about learning to ride a bike, and that we can all learn to, you know, was anybody born learning how to ride a bike? No, we weren't. But some of us get on a bike and we can ride it right off the bat. Our balance is better, our everything is better. That doesn't mean that others can't learn how to ride a bike. Some of them will learn through YouTube, some of them will learn through falling, some of them will learn through parents, but we can all learn how to ride a bike. Now, once we learn, I don't know how to do tricks, right? I don't know how to do those things. Can I learn it? Absolutely. And so just that idea that we're all constantly learning how to ride our bikes in math, and that none of us are necessarily born with it. And we even talk about, like, I'll have a training wheels table. So we're just not there yet, and we've got our training wheels on. And so then I'm here to help you guide that. And then I've got some that are at the trickster table. They don't need me. They're doing tricks all on their own. Go for it. And it's just a good analogy for me to kind of come back to the year, throughout the year, that, guys, you haven't been on your bike after Christmas. So, like, we got to practice again. You haven't forgotten how to do it. You just need to practice it again.
Amber, I bring us back to the same thing with regards to teachers. So in this room right now, and you need to see me, I'm kind of clicking through the video so I can see your faces, and then I click back because I'm really good about learning faces and names. But I see some of you that are seasoned professional developers, and quite honestly, Summer, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I've been in your professional development session, because were you sidekick with Dr. Bay Williams at the KCM conference when she and her specialist did the presentation at the KCM conference in March?
I wasn't at the KCM conference, but I did work with her for the JCPS professional development series about basic fact fluency.
So beautiful. So I'm going to use Summer as the example. So Summer has done professional development for lots of teachers. Am I right? Hundreds, probably.
Yes.
Yeah. Hundreds and hundreds. And so I use that example as a young teacher. She's really vibrant in JCPS, but again, we're at different places here, right? Our transformation, some have never done an official professional development for lots of people. And so this will be new, and some have done it for years. So again, the transformation is each of us is at a different part. And I'll field one more comment before we begin.
Okay, I'll chime in real quick. The growth mindset that Carol Dweck invented or grandfathered or research studies.
Made famous.
Anyway, she talks about the power of yet, not yet. Yes, made famous. And I was listening to Sheila, and she was talking about offering, your students hope, or just because you didn't start with the most talent, get your skill, your effort. And Carol talks about giving kids the power of yet. Even if they're not there yet, just using that one little word, you can offer them the possibilities, with your effort, your skill, you can get there. So I love that. I just wanted to share that real quick.
Fantastic. That's Stephanie Lyons. Stephanie is from Boyd County. And so when you think about as Eastern Kentucky as you can get, you're going to touch, you're going to go through Stephanie's county if you're headed east. So, all right, so we are going to watch this video. I would like for you to have a focus question, and your focus question for me is just this simple, and that is, what is your takeaway? So you need to internalize these videos, and so every time I show you one, I'm going to ask you, what is your takeaway? What is it that you're putting in your heart and your soul with regards to your Kentucky Math Teacher Leader journey? Because the focus in this case is not on students, but this is on you and your transformation. This first part where we're talking in the introduction is really having you begin that process of thinking like a Kentucky Math Teacher Leader.
I got into this business in part because my dad told me when I was growing up, you know, you're no genius. He'd say it out of the blue, and he meant it. Not meanly, I think, but just matter-of-factly. And I grew up with this father who not only was obsessed with how much of a genius his kids were or weren't, but also was obsessed with achievement, and I think I did inherit that from him. When I was a classroom teacher, I realized that there was a yawning gap between what kids could do and what they did do. And again, the reverse engineering of greatness is so that all of the kids that we know and love can become a little more great. Catherine Cox, Stanford University. She systematically pored over thousands of pages of diaries, primary biographical data from 301 geniuses, asking the question that my father asked: what makes a genius? The tendency not to abandon tasks from mere changeability, not seeking something fresh because of novelty, not always looking for a change. That's what I mean by passion for what you do. Second, the tendency not to abandon tasks in the face of obstacles, perseverance, tenacity, doggedness. And this brings me to the modern day study of grit. Grit is sustained passion and perseverance for especially long-term goals. I believe that there is such a thing as talent. Without actually doing something, you'll never develop skill. Skill is what happens when talent is multiplied by effort. You may have heard of the 10,000 hour rule. You will meet countless individuals who have done something for 10,000 hours and are still mediocre. What makes the difference is not the quantity of practice so much as the quality of those 10,000 hours. I think most people start off like potential world-class performers. They know nothing, they learn, but at some point they walk into work and they do the same thing on Wednesday that they did on Tuesday. And that is what keeps you on what I call the plateau of arrested development. Here's a third option. You can even miss the plateau of arrested development. You can drop out of what you do. What happens when human beings drop out of things, maybe you spoke a foreign language, maybe you played a musical instrument like I did, is that you lose that skill. Human skill is really use it or lose it. And what worries me is that some kids and some grown-ups keep dropping out of things, and they're never on any red learning curve to excellence. Now, I said quality mattered, but what exactly do I mean? There are really only 4 elements of the kind of practice that world-class achievers do. First, world-class experts have a very conscious intention in mind when they sit down to do something. It's extraordinarily precise. But if you went to work last week and you didn't know exactly what you were trying to get better at, my contention is that you were not doing deliberate practice. Second, 100% focus, full heart, full effort. The lesson is concentration, effort, focus. Third, feedback, data. You need to know, did I make the shot or did I not make the shot? How did that sound when I pulled the bow like this? What was my time on that lap? What happens is that feedback is typically negative. Here's what you didn't do that you wanted to do, and are you willing to do the fourth thing? The fourth thing that world-class experts do that is different from most of us is that they truly listen to the feedback. They reflect, they make an adjustment, and they start the cycle all over again. So before we wrap up, let me finish the story about me and my dad. Little girl, South Jersey, told she's no genius, thinks about it for a moment, has to agree, grows up, and in 2013 is told by the MacArthur Foundation that actually she is a genius. And here's what I really want to say. If genius means getting things in life effortlessly, automatically, because you've got some inborn gift that nobody else has, then my dad is right. I'm no genius. But if genius is working with all of your heart on something that you love, that's endlessly fascinating to you, then I would say, Dad, you are a genius, and so am I, and so can everyone be if they choose to be. Thank you so much.
So I want to give you a little bit of breathing space with regards to thinking about that. So take a minute.
For many people, summer means time off and relaxation, but Angela Duckworth, author of the New York Times best.
And so what I want you to do is to ponder, what is the biggest takeaway for you? And how does it apply to you as a Kentucky math teacher leader? So as you're writing, I'm going to mention something to you, and that is this, that Pam is going to put you in your team room. So our breakout rooms are going to begin here in a moment, but you're going to see that she's working on the back side, putting you in a room, and it will say, are you ready to join your room? And the answer is not yet. But so you'll see it, and so just let it come up on your screen. But she's going to organize all 45 of us into the rooms, actually 47 of us, into the various rooms, so that in just a moment you can go be with your team. While she's doing that, just kind of ignore that. One of our little tech things on the back side that we're getting pretty fancy with all this Zoom stuff. So one of the things that I wanted you to see is that she does talk about the tendency not to abandon a task in the face of obstacles, perseverance, tenacity, and I adored this word doggedness. That was a word that really spoke to me. I love that word doggedness. And grit, again, by definition that we've been studying now for over a week, is this sustained passion. That's a word that should speak to you, and perseverance for especially long-term goals. I do want to mention to you that Kentucky Math Teacher Leaders is technically for one more year, because if you know anything about Kentucky Center for Math, we're funded on a budget cycle, and so we're funded for another year. We anticipate, we've been funded for the last 13. We hope to be, we know that we'll be funded for the next 13. So Kentucky Math Teacher Leaders is a cohort of folks that could go on for the next 3 years. This is something that's exciting, because what research tells us is that true transformation and change happens in 3 to 5 years. And so our goal is to for you to stick with us and for us to stick with you in order to see the transformation in your district. So you've had a chance really to think about the takeaway, and I'm giving you a sneak preview of what we're getting ready to head to do. But I'd love to have some of you, and again, we'll do that shared leadership, hoping to hear from everyone throughout the day. And so feel free to, if something really spoke to you with regards to the video, to unmute your mic and to tell us kind of what you were thinking.
I'll go. One of the things that really stood out to me is when she was talking about people who are truly passionate and dedicated to their craft. Not only do they receive feedback, but they actually take it and they implement it and they use it to make them better. And I actually read an article a couple years ago that was really good about feedback, and it was called Feed Up, Feedback, and Feed Forward. And it was talking about the process of feedback and how feedback isn't just one-sided. It has to be that cycle, and it has to continuously go, and you have to be able to receive and give feedback.
So Brittany, there's a couple things that I'm thinking about. I'd love for you to send me that article especially if it spoke to you and it stuck to you, this is one of the things that we will do for each other, and that is share beautiful readings. In addition to that, Brittany, I want you to know that your team is in Jefferson County. So Brittany is there at Jefferson County Secondary. She's a high school math teacher. There you go, Kim and CJ. You're going to beginning to find some more of your people. But it is the feedback that you'll receive from your team that is going to be extra important. It is the feedback that you'll receive from your KCM support, your leadership team here, that we will be mentoring you and thinking about that. So that deliberate practice is so important. And over the next 2 days, we're really going to try to find what it is that you're going to be passionate about transforming in your district. Another person with some reflection?
I don't care to go. I just, the idea of going in every day and having something in mind that you want to tackle and that you want to improve, and getting the feedback. A lot of the feedback comes from our little guys that we're teaching, but just there are obstacles that get in the way. I tried to do math centers and I love them, and I had to adapt this last year just because I had so many students and not enough computers. But again, just not to give up, to just kind of find another way to get those in, just for the fact that I knew that it worked and helped kids excel. So
beautiful. Thank you, Misty. Misty Freeling, Walton Verona. Walton Verona is an independent schools district there at the bottom of Boone County.
Can you
I don't mind to jump in.
Oh, sorry.
I'll go ahead.
Go ahead.
I just thought, as what is important, especially for math teaching, something that I've kind of developed or come to realize over the years, the quality of the practice is way more significant than the quantity. And I just think with anything, if I'm a former athlete, with sports, with whatever, music, we really need to focus on what activities we are planning and implementing, because time is limited. We know that, and especially this year that might be true, but how can we maximize the quality of our pedagogy, our activities, our lessons, and to best benefit our students, but also I think that will help us develop as educators as well, for really being intentional with those practices. So I thought that was a cool point.
Nice parallel to athletics, because I think a lot of you, I know several of you are coaches in a variety of different ways, and you know that what she's saying is true. So the parallel that I'm making for you all is the quality of the things that you do for Kentucky Math Teacher Leaders and the quality of the work that you're going to be doing to transform your school and your district. It's about the quality of the time and not the quantity of the time.
I would like to say something about the reflection process, because when she was talking about those 4 things that you do, getting feedback and then refining your instruction based on that feedback, I wrote down external and internal feedback, because one of the things I've noticed with teaching, you're a new teacher, they put you alone in the room and you have to develop the ability to reflect on yourself, because there's no other grown-up in there helping you reflect. And that's kind of tricky. When I came from another state, and one of the things we worked on with Principles to Action is moving in and out of each other's rooms and being kind of ghosting the teaching, and then being the other adult to reflect later and getting that external feedback and being really open to it. And that's just incredibly helpful, because then you're hearing another adult see what's going on, and because you're 100% focused, you're so in it, having somebody from the outside give you feedback. And that's why I'm glad we're in this huge group of people who can help with that.
It's fantastic. I'm also watching the chat, and I see that Stephanie from Glasgow mentions that doggedness is indeed that great word. She says that that's good for her Glasgow Scotties. Rachel from Harlan mentions it is indeed the quality over the quantity, and that seems to be a word that's coming out from everyone. We're going to transition to some thinking about some goals. I'm gonna scoot back one, and that is we need to begin the process of you thinking about a transformation goal. It's going to be smoldering over the next couple weeks, and it's going to kind of, it'll take shape by the end of tomorrow, but you need to think about your own personal transformation goal and then think about a district transformation goal. So let's start with a minute or so of thinking, because I think you've already been thinking about this, about a transformation goal for yourself. What might be something you want to work on? You've kind of known it in your soul. There's something that you want to get better with. Now, Funda is going to have a big time of talking to us, so that may change it a little bit, but I think your transformation goal, you may know what it is. Think about it. Going to give you 30 seconds, 45 seconds, and then I'd love for you to type it in the chat. I'm thinking about this. Go ahead and put it out there. Be brave, expose yourself. Say, okay, I think I'm going to go in this area of transformation for myself. And then we're going to talk about some district goals. So I'm watching the chat, and you guys should be too. What might be your transformation goal? Okay, we'll put in the chat, thinking about what area might you be. Nice. Mike says, I'm working on moving from funneling questions to focus questions. Beautiful. Mike, I think you're really going to enjoy our conversations with regards to discussions. Okay, Jessica, thinking about meeting the needs of all students, managing multiple levels of achievement, enhancing the quality discussions. Lindsay, you're right in the right place. We love to talk math here. So you're beginning to think about what might be your entry point. What might be an entry point that you have with regards to some transformation. Ah, here they come. Stephanie Lyons, Boyd County Transformation, Reciprocal Feedback. Brittany thinking that, and so Brittany's got a leadership goal. She says, knowing that I can share with my district and maybe putting myself out there. What does that look like? How does that? Shelley from Little Rue talking about productive struggle. Helping students to struggle, but then to help them. Yeah. Lisa says, I hear you, Kelly, with your idea of teaching practices and student practices. You're right. I got to get that right in my own classroom. So beautiful job. Beautiful job. Continue going ahead and typing those in. This is going to be, we capture the chats so that upon the end of our time, I can reflect on them and see kind of where your entry point is. And so the fact that your name is there, the fact that you've got, that you put your district after it, that was very helpful. Do you see how helpful that is in the chat? That you're able to see that? Like I now know that Heather's from Elliott. So Heather Stevens is from Elliott. And then I can begin to see the Rowan County crew. All right, beautiful, beautiful. So I'm gonna move on to the next part because it's about time for us to begin thinking about getting into our rooms. So Pam is going, I think by now you have gotten an invitation to go into your team room. Now is the time to go into your team room, and you are going to begin, we don't have quite 15 minutes, probably more like 10, but let's have a little conversation that goes from your goal to your team goal. But let me tell you about a couple ways that you have to think about this. If you are a district goal, so for example, you're Jefferson's all going to be in the same room together. You're going to have that opportunity to talk. You're going to have this conversation about maybe what is the general district transformation goal that you may want to work with Stacy and Andrea with regards to Jefferson County, because it's such a big county. But it might be that you can't come to consensus. And so maybe there's a high school goal and an elementary goal. I'm going to say to you out loud, your district transformation goal can be one that's cumulative. So Madison, you guys working, Rowan, you guys working, Walton, Verona, you guys working together. It could be one goal, but it might be that each of you has an umbrella goal with your own individual piece of it, because I don't want you to have to be working individually on a goal that doesn't seem right to you. But right now, we're looking to see if we can figure out some district and some team transformation goals. Introduce yourself and your team, talk to your team, and I'll pull you back in about 10 minutes. This is just the entry conversation. This should just begin the process. We're getting the ball rolling. Go ahead and hop into your rooms. So while everybody's hopping back in, I do want to say that I see on the screen, you can see Haley Moblin from Pulaski. She's our newest newlywed. Literally got married 2 weekends ago. When she interviewed, she was Haley Bouchard. Now, she's Haley Moblin. It goes fast, girl. Life goes quick. So indeed, during that time, you barely have enough time to kind of get thinking about your goal. It's not time. It's not time to really have a district transformation goal. It's not time for us to be there yet. It's time for the wheels to get spinning with regards to that. Can anybody share out for just a minute, or just a tiny bit of what you were thinking, and then I'll let us go to break.
So we were talking about in Jefferson County how we have such a huge district and diverse population and all that, about how we want to work to kind of improve the teachers that we work with, their pedagogical content knowledge and the shifts that go along with it.
Good. Sean, I think what I love that I hear about JCPS is the doggedness to not be so worried about the fact that it's just the 5 of you tackling on a district that's the size of half of Kentucky, right? Because let's be honest about how dense it is. It's huge. It's huge. So I think that if you all did that together, I think you really would have a beautiful entry point. One more.
I'll share for Madison County. Madison County is already really good with Math Design Collaborative in our elementary and middle schools. So we talked about the 2 of our members who actually are trained in that and doing really well, actually helping myself at the high school start implementing the ground roots of that into my classroom, so that then I can start sharing the things that are working with the other 16 members of my math team, so that we can start seeing some of that awesome work in our high schools that we don't see yet. And then I know Gretchen, who's also in elementary school, actually getting that into her school district in her Berea school. And so taking what's already working good in our district and just making it grow.
Fantastic. That's and what I feel is this organic. So you see, well, when I put you in the district and I said there's really no rules about where your entry point is, we'll talk about refining those, but it's at least some sort of entry point that would be both passionate, persevering for you guys to have the grit with that, but also enfolding teacher leadership. I feel those around you that will be infused with that. Well, fantastic. Well, I want to thank you. This is the first part. I'm a little bit over, and so I'm going to give you a 7-minute break. If we could do that. I have actually, yes, actually I take it back. It's an 8-minute break. If we could come back at 10:05 during this time, Dee and Cindy are on. They're my KCM friends, and they remind me that this is the time I want you to turn off your video, and I actually want you to get up out of your chair. So you must get up out of your chair. What is it that everybody's got to do, Dee? Everybody got to get up out of their chair. You got to go get some water, go to the bathroom, change. You need that brain break.
Get up and do something that has nothing to do with being in front of a computer screen.
That's right.
Kiss
your kids.
Too much time doing
hug
that.
your dog. That's right. All right. See you back at 10:05. So welcome back, everyone. We're going to go ahead and hop in here. I want to introduce, I think I need to introduce our KCM Jewel Funda. I need you to know just how dedicated she is going to be to this process, but then you need to hear a little bit about her pedigree because she's kind of a big deal. So Funda is a national expert Funda Gonulatis has a BS in secondary science math teaching. She went to say it, Funda.
Bosphorus University.
Bosphorus University in Istanbul, Turkey. She's a native of Istanbul, Turkey. That's what is about her voice that just, oh, my ears, I adore it. She has a master's in secondary school science and math education. And her master's thesis was Prospective Teachers' Views on Using History of Mathematics and Mathematics Teaching. She then got on an airplane and she traveled across the Atlantic and landed in Michigan, where she did her graduate work at Michigan State University. Those of us that are middle school teachers, one thing to know about us is that Dee and I are middle school teachers, and so Funda was instrumental in helping the development and the creation of the Connected Mathematics project that was out of Michigan State. She worked closely with Glenda Lappin, who is one of those math icons that I have studied. So Funda is a big deal. Her master's thesis, her PhD thesis is what I really want you to know about that. Her PhD thesis is on mathematics teachers collaboration mediated by a problem-solving curriculum. So imagine that here it is, she studied for her PhD in regards to teacher leadership via problem solving. We couldn't have a better expert. She is a KCM Jewel. And so Funda is here for our pedagogy section for the next hour and a half. Funda, I look forward to learning from you.
Thank you for that nice introduction. I'm very excited about this process because I was with you, all of you, since from the start, doing the interviews and everything. And I think this is such a needed time for this leadership. As you all say, we feel like sometimes isolated in our corners, and this is the time we feel more isolated if we don't have this team of people. So I think this will be a great team. Today I'm going to talk about many things, but I will focus my presentation around one idea of understanding what happens or what needs to happen in a math classroom. I would like to acknowledge that we all come from different backgrounds, which means that you have different expertise. So some of the things that I am saying here might you already know. We are not rediscovering everything. So just bear with me if you already know these 2 days things. But the thing today, one of the goals from today is building this shared understanding of some of the concepts. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about is I'm going to structure everything I'm going to talk about in the idea of this instructional triangle, which unpacks the components of a classroom. That will be our start point. But with that instructional triangle, I will talk about what does it mean, standards for mathematical practices, you already know. But the conversations and unpacking those ideas will be mattered more in this context. And then we will briefly talk about what it means to think mathematically from an historical perspective of George Polya, how to solve problems. And then we will look into the discourse, classroom discourse, and I'm going to provide you a framework to analyze your own classroom discourse, but as a teacher leader, to analyze other classroom discourses, whether they're effective or not. And then if we have time, we will start thinking about the principles, the action book, effective teaching mathematics practices, and then we will continue that conversation tomorrow. Okay. So we have a packed agenda, so I'm going to go ahead and start with analyzing a mathematics classroom. Now, when I say a mathematics classroom, what comes into your mind? What are the components? What is in a math classroom? Just a couple ideas before introducing the instructional triangle. I call it the instructional triangle, but you'll hear why I call that. So what do you see in a math classroom? From just basic perspective, what is happening in a math classroom? What are the components?
I would see times for discourse, maybe even you might see charts or something around the room, some kind of things that have students like their responses or how they're working. You would see some collaborative things. I've been working with building math minds, and one of the book studies was called Counting and Collections. And I've been reading that book, and I decided that's how I wanted to start my morning work, is just kids working together to be counting and counting different collections and talking about how they can sort those collections and things.
Yeah, I liked how you started with this. You try different ways to try the interactions, but you use the term discourse, you use the student and interaction between them, and a teacher and students interactions. So yes, those are some of the components. I'm not going to take a lot of time in here because I want to bring this perspective from Cohort, Rodenbush, and Ball, which very, very famous people. When we think about a mathematics classroom and an general classroom in a United States context, it is like closed doors sometimes. It is like a black box. In the math education history, they call it a black box. And we are trying to unpack this black box with these components. There's a teacher. We are all teachers. There are students, but there's mathematics. There is a big component in this instructional triangle. And when you see this triangle, do you see this triangle in the middle? That's why it is called triangle. The mathematics classroom happens with a continuous interaction between these three components. Sometimes there's less. There's sometimes in not effective classroom, there's just teacher and student, from teacher to student, one-way arrow. But as you can see, these are all two-way arrows. So the interactions are double-sided, double ways, and it's not just teacher and student, meaning teacher is transmitting the information, but students are also interacting with mathematics in this classroom, which means as a teacher, as you are telling some things, they are building their own understanding. There's something that you see outside called context. In this age, we know that things don't happen in isolation. The context of the classroom, meaning the background students bring to the classroom, or the environments you create in your classrooms, the way you decorate, the graphs, the charts, like Gretchen was saying, all those also make up the context of the classroom. Or the context might mean the safe, trusty environment that you build with your students, who feels included. That also means context. So we are going to unpack these components of instructional triangle today, because our goal from these 2 days is we are going to transform our own classroom with a lens on ourselves as teacher, our own students, not just individually, but students and student interaction, and also our interaction with mathematics and our students' interaction with mathematics. Okay, I'm going to ask you just briefly, can you name a couple of productive student actions that you would like to see in a classroom? Just one or two. We are again brainstorming stage. What might be a couple of productive student actions that you want to see in a classroom?
Productive struggle and discussion among students.
Nice, very nice. Productive struggle, and you want to see that discussion among the students. So I think those are two separate things, but very related. Students discuss each other, but when one student gives up, other student might be helping, or they might be doing this work together.
I look for real world connections.
Real world connections, I like. And that real world connection is about students, but it's also about students and mathematics. So when we are having students interact with each other, are we providing context, the mathematical content that's bringing the real world connection? Nice. We can have one more.
Fearlessness,
Asking
like
questions.
not being afraid to to ask good questions and not being afraid to make mistakes.
Fearlessness, oh my God, that's, I love that word. Yeah, we have fearless students, not hesitating to ask questions. And that's about the context of the classroom. When the students are interacting with you as a teacher, and when the students are interacting within each other, are we creating a context, an environment for students that they feel be brave enough to ask questions? Nice. And as a teacher, I think they are very interconnected, but can you name a couple teaching practices that you feel like is promoting deep learning? Now we are on this part, teacher. Let's look at ourselves as a teacher. What are some effective practices, you think? Providing feedback. Providing feedback. And I like that because this is this bidirectional arrow, right? It's not just we are telling things, the students is giving us feedback when we are giving them feedback by looking at their actions. What else? And then I need to look at the chat box as well. I'm doing that great job in looking at chat. Math talks. Priscilla says the math talks, like the number talks that we have the students think about things, right? Bring their reasoning, a variety of strategies is a nice, another productive teaching practice. We are going to talk a lot about this, but the way I structured this is when we have all of these summarized for us and packaged for us already. And we can fine tune and we can detail those. But when we talk about students and student interaction, there's also, in addition to all those discourse level of analysis and interactions, standards for mathematical practices as defined by the Common Core standards or Kentucky academic standards. It defines what kind of actions we want from our students to engage in, that define their interaction with mathematics. Also, the effective mathematics teaching practices, principles to action book, we are going to review those, has those good teaching practices. And the mathematics is all about rich mathematical learning opportunities. We are not going to dig deep into the mathematics. We are going to live on this lens today, students to student interactions. And we are going to dig deep into the standards for mathematical practices. And then we'll shift into ourselves as teachers and then unpack some of the effective teaching practices. But with the Zoom meetings, ongoing Zoom meetings, we will bring a lot of opportunities to build on our mathematical knowledge as well. Okay, so that's on the horizon. Right, so we talked about standards for mathematical practices. But before digging deep into the standards for mathematical practices, I want to have a brief survey. I want you to choose 5 words. Let me get my video panel here. I want you to choose 5 words that you think best describes someone who can be successful at mathematics. And what I want you to do is you can, if you have a QR scanner, you can scan this code, or I'm gonna copy this link and then I'm gonna put that into chat box so that, sorry. Let me copy this chat box and then put in the chat box. You can just type in this one and you will have access to the link. Okay? So I put it in here. I'm gonna stop. So look at this list and please try to choose 5 words. And in this link, you'll see there's a space for 5 words. Can you access the link? Is the link working for you? Can I see it a couple thumbs up if you were able to?
Yeah, it's looking good, Funda.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and then share the other screen that we will see the survey results. I'll give 1 more minute and then I'm gonna transition. I'm stopping sharing my screen. I hope you have your words already, and I'll share the internet screen with you. And this is the screen that you should be seeing, but I should be seeing your results. Let's see. Okay, this is a dynamic. So we are gonna see what words to really describe how we see the success in mathematics. I see it's coming along. Resourceful. I love working with really thoughtful teachers. Believe me, if I present this question in a different setting, I might have seen a very different answers. Teachable, persistent, curious, open-minded. And the way we see open-minded in two ways because of different typing. One more. I'll just wait just about 30 seconds more to give you some time. Do you know what's surprising to me? I'm going to say that. But think of now, you answered your question. Okay, now you're going to talk now. You're not going to type anything. What if you ask this question to the students in your own classrooms? Words, a couple of you, what words they might be more leaning towards choosing?
One word
I was thinking about that. Oh, sorry, Brittany, go ahead.
One word that I don't see up here that I almost went to, but I stopped, would be accurate. A lot of my students think that in order to be good at math, they have to be accurate, but it's not really about accuracy. It's about being able to learn from your mistakes.
Yeah, very nice. Yes, accurate definitely will make one of the high frequency words. What else?
I think a lot of kids in my class would say smart and fast. They think they have to be smart to be good at math.
Exactly. And that goes back to those videos that we watched last week. Why do you think that it's about smartness? They don't learn it themselves. It is how they interact with mathematics. Remember, the instructional triangle has teacher to student interaction, student to student interaction, and interaction between students and mathematics. All those interactions make them define mathematics as something you need to be smart. That's why I presented everything in terms of that instructional triangle. We need to attend all those components of that triangle in order to deal with that challenge of being smart. In other words, some people, when I ask this question to professors, teacher, they talk about fast. And I see no fast. I'm so proud of all of you. Why fast is not here? We'll just see some students say fast, being fast, especially thinking of those timed tests. Oh my God, they have to respond in 3 seconds. I don't know if you're using it elementary math Excel, iExcel or something like that, and they need to respond all the facts in 3 seconds. Why they wouldn't associate being good and successful in math to being fast? Because what their teachers do most of the time. And tomorrow, hopefully, Jennifer Williams will talk about some alternative ways of developing that fluency. But this is a beautiful graph, and I'm glad that we have come with these words: motivated, flexible, persistent, curious, teachable, resourceful, creative, open-minded, interested. And today, we are going to talk about from the student side of the things, how we can help our students develop these skills and replace their pre-existing notions of being fast, being smart, being accurate with these words. Okay, that's the focus for today. And then maybe to the end of the session or tomorrow, we're going to talk about the teaching practices and how to do those. I'm going to go back to my slides. So this worked, Kelly. We weren't sure if this was going to work or not.
I was getting ready to type and say, I love that. That was great. Kudos, Funda. She's being gritty and fearless today.
Yes, I haven't tried this technology before, but it works and it's easy to use. All right, so this is the image of brain, our brain, from a New York Times article. You see different colors. And the orange color is signifying, showing where there is the most activity. Okay, and these images are taken during a mathematical problem solving activity. Do you have an idea what might be the first one, the second one, third one, and fourth one correspond to? Try to imagine a mathematical problem-solving activity. And the orange coloring shows when our brains are actually working, active. So do you have an idea in terms of problem solving what these might correspond to? Shelley, can you unmute yourself? You want to hear? I think you were talking, Shelley. Were you? No.
Oh, sorry. I was just telling my child to get my phone.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I thought you were saying so. Sorry. I'm sorry. All right. So what might be these components of problem solving where there's a lot of activity? If there's some activity, activity is decreasing, and the least activity, amount of activity.
I would think the most activity would be when students are engaging in some kind of conversation around the activity, like thinking about different perspectives. And so students are having to think about what other people are saying and then have a response.
Nice. Any other thoughts about this? Thank you, Gretchen. This is the New York Times, and I'm going to put the link to the chat box so that you have access to the full article. But this is how the authors of this article categorize these four sections: encoding or downloading, planning or strategizing, solving, performing the math, and responding. I am going to use our own math education terminology. Okay, this is journalist terminology. From our perspective, encoding means when you first time see the problem and when you are trying to make sense of the problem is the part our brains are most active, vibrant. Okay, that goes back to what kind of opportunities are we providing them? Will they lead to this active brain development if it's just memorization activity where they don't need to make sense of anything, okay? And then the second part is planning, strategizing, pulling a strategy from our repertoire of strategies. The rest is more straightforward. You're applying the strategy and then responding, typing out the answer. Imagine out of these four components, if this is the only part, the last part is something that you pay attention in your classroom. If that's responding part, typing out the answer, providing an accurate response is only what you value in your classroom, you are not valuing any thinking, right? And again, I'm not talking about you, about us. I'm talking about the general mathematical understanding and the general practice of the teachers. So what we want to do is we want to see kids making sense of the problems and devise some solution paths as they are solving this. Problem solving is all the basics of the problem. That's the building block. That's what stays with them when they graduate. Okay, so I think when we are thinking about our goals, how we are, think about this, keep this in your mind. How am I providing tools, equipment for my students that they can take with them, even they go to the middle school. I am an elementary teacher, starting from kindergarten to the middle school, to the high school, to the college and afterwards. Isn't that what stays with them? Problem-solving ability, and isn't that where our brains are more active? So that's what it means thinking mathematically, okay? So just keep in mind that problem-solving is a skill. I know when we are sometimes formulating our goals, we focus on our practices, but what I want us to consider is not just our practices, but student practices as well, okay? All right. Now, this is kind of a very overwhelming chart, but I just want to show you before getting into the standards for mathematical practices. But what we value is described in math education literature by 5 components. It's called 5 strengths of mathematical proficiency. So procedural fluency is one of the components, but conceptual understanding, a productive discussion, a strategic competence, and adaptive reasoning are parts of mathematical proficiency. So if you go back, remember what I said about being, what it means to be successful in mathematics. I think our Wordle graph, our graphic captured all those components very nicely. Remember how you talk about open-mindedness? How you talk about resourcefulness? When you typed in those words, being resourceful, those are about strategic competence and adaptive reasoning. So we are very proud that those words came from you, because that captures the real meaning of mathematical proficiency. Procedural fluency is not just accuracy, but being flexible, efficient, using appropriately, but also conceptual understanding, meaning sense making, knowing whys and whens, when things work. And of course, productive disposition. Do they like math? Do they associate something positive about mathematics is really important. I think, Britton, you said about the real life connection. That's also productive disposition. Where will I use this ever? Being able to answer that question is creating that productive disposition. So when we are really assessing our students' understanding, we shouldn't be just assessing by looking at their procedural fluency, but we should assess by looking at all these 5 different components. But also when we are developing our students' skills, we should try to develop all these 5 aspects, not only 1 aspect or 2 aspects. So what I am trying to say is mathematics is not just about content, but mathematics is about skills as well. So since we are talking about mathematics is about skills, that brings automatically this beautiful chart Kelly shared with us, 8 mathematical practices. And it has been years. How many years since the Common Core was out? 2011, right? 9 years since the Common Core was out, and it was a new big thing. It's not a big thing now. But what I am seeing I'm not seeing in many classrooms is these are just as posters in the classrooms sometimes. Okay, we have those posters and we name those. But the thing that I'm trying to communicate today, and hopefully you will live with that today, is we are not just developing content. The practice of doing mathematics is as important and valuable as learning the content. These are 8 effective ways kids can engage with in mathematics in a productive way. What are we doing to develop these skills with our kids? Okay, I want you just to have that question in your mind. Am I doing anything in my classroom to create more problem solvers? First practice. Am I doing anything to help them reason abstractly and quantitatively? What I am doing, constructing viable arguments and critical reasoning of others, math talk, that math talk comment that came in one of the productive. So those are all components of the practices that we want to raise in our kids. Okay. So what we are going to do is, do you have your coaching book with you? Okay. Now, coaching book, if you just open the last page, very, very last page, there is a cardboard page, and that has, wait. That has a mathematical practices look fors. Okay, one of the cardboard page, the very last page, one of the last pages, one side has mathematical standards for mathematical practices look fors. So try to find that, okay? You can, and then if you want access to this resource, this is the digital access, so you can copy for your teachers, these look fors. So this is a digital material like the blue, because sometimes it's very hard to make a copy out of a paper. You can just print by using this link. And I'm going to provide this link on the chat box as well so that you have access to this link. Look at these look fors. Jenny Bay Williams and Meg McCarthy already defined what to look for in developing these effective practices in our classrooms. I'm typing this so that you can, you know how to access to these practices. What I want you to do is take 1 minute individual time. We are gonna have a collective time, 1 minute individual time, and to look at these look fors, okay? Read these look fors, and then try to see if this was your observation protocol in your classroom. Okay, these look fors means these are the things that I'm going to see in my classroom. I will be looking for in my classroom. How many of those you are seeing in your classroom? That's the assessment perspective. But as a teacher, we want to develop those. How am I allowing my kids develop these look fors? Okay. For example, am I helping my kids communicate precisely using appropriate language? But this is from all student perspective, meaning communicate precisely means, are the students communicating precisely, or are you just communicating precisely? Okay, this is from the student perspective. You might be a perfect teacher. You might be doing all these modeling in your classroom, but are your students doing this? Okay, now get ready. I talk too much, but I'm gonna make you talk. You're gonna get into breakout groups, and you're gonna see some standards examples. Okay, what you're gonna do is you're gonna use your standard list, those 8 practices, and you're gonna sort those scenarios, classroom scenarios, into certain practices. Okay, I'm gonna open the Jamboard so that we can see the Jamboard, but I need to stop sharing my screen.
I was gonna say, do you, go back to your share screen. Guys, you won't want to take a picture of that if you didn't already do it. Sometimes we get into so one of the little Zoom tips that we're going to give you is take a picture of that with your camera so that when you're in your Zoom room and you say, I wonder what she wanted us to do, that works out, right? Stop sharing, Funda.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is, I think I shared the desktop now so that everybody can see everything. Let me see, yes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type the Jamboard, but I'm going to describe before getting into your groups. It's not time to go to the groups yet, okay? I'm going to describe and make sure everybody has access to the Jamboard. Let me just type in. So go ahead and open this Jamboard, okay? I'm going to open the Jamboard as well, and I'm going to describe you what I expect you to do step by step. All right. So just on the chat box, you will see a link to a Jamboard. And once you open I see many people. You guys are fast and nice. I love. And if you have any issues, please communicate to us. We are here to help you. But what you're going to see is you're going to see a page with different classroom scenarios. These are from all elementary or middle school, early middle school. But I'm sure everybody will benefit from this practice. For example, scenario D is talking about how Anna is trying to find the area of an unusual shaped garden. So this is actually happening in a classroom. And then what you're going to do is I have 8 pages, which each titled as with each practice. You're going to copy. You can use your shortcut key on your computer. You're going to copy the practice and sort them out. But this is our master document. Okay, are you watching me carefully? This is the important part. This is our master document. You are not working on this one. What you are doing is, the connection is, so what you are doing is you're going to make a copy of this one. I think my internet is playing games. Can you see my screen? Can you hear me well? I think it's just the Google Jamboard, but that's why I want you to make a copy. When there is an overwhelming people connecting to the same document, that's what happens, it disconnects. So when you open, you're gonna click on this 3 dots screen right next to share, okay? And you're gonna make a copy. Do you see what I am doing? You are making a copy, and then please don't sort here on this document. You're gonna make a copy and you're gonna share with the same people so that I can see it when you make this copy. Okay, I'm gonna show it again. You are opening this Jamboard. You are clicking on this 3 dot. You're not, this is a master document. Please don't mess up with this one. You're gonna make a copy. You're making a copy. And as you're making copy, you're sharing with the same people, okay? That's what you're gonna do in your breakout groups. And the job that I want you to do is you're gonna sort these by providing, you can use the sticky notes from here, for example, like this, and providing your rationale, group conversation, why you sort it that way. And then if you have time, I don't think we'll have time, but if you have time, try to come up with a couple examples of your own to the practices that you feel like the most, okay? Because I think this time is important for building this shared understanding of practices. Do you know why this is important? You are gonna be in a room with an elementary teacher, with a middle school teacher, and with a high school teacher. This is important because you get to hear a high school perspective as an elementary teacher. A high school teacher will get to see an elementary teacher perspective. The conversation matters more than sorting, okay? So we are not messing up on the master screen, you're making your own copies.
Linda, I want to reassure everyone that if you'll just keep working on it, because one person needs to be in your team. And then if you'll keep going back to it, I too got the high traffic, but I kept clicking until I was able to get in. So it's just slow and go. We've got some time. On that corner beside the share, do those 3 buttons, and there's make a copy. I had to wait because mine wasn't letting me make a copy yet, but we only need 1. So Funda, go into our room.
Copy, because one person is going to share the screen. Okay, when you go to the breakout rooms, one person will share a screen. Okay, we are allowing. Did we set up that, Kelly? Can they share their screens in their breakout groups?
That's exactly right. So Pam, making sure everyone's a co-host now, going in and making sure everyone's a co-host, then that will allow you to have someone in your group to share your screen. That green button will show up at the bottom. So I think that you have been offered to go back into your room. Pam, are we right? CJ, I can see you. Will you shake your head? Have you been offered to go back into your room? Okay. All right, everybody. Good, good. Shelley, I see you too. Go ahead and join your room. Somebody make a copy and somebody share their screen. And then do the activity.
All right, I'm going to my Jamboard. Do you see my Jamboard is populated with copy of the standards because you each made your own copy. I feel like when there's a lot of people in Zoom meetings, as you are working with your districts, you might take into consideration. Jamboard is great for 5-10 people working together, but sometimes when a lot of people trying to access to the same document, it creates a lot of issues. So making a copy is a safer option. And then once they share with me, I can see immediately. I'm just gonna randomly open one. I hope you enjoy the conversations, but I'm gonna open one. We are gonna talk about a couple examples, but is there anything that you want to bring to whole class conversation before getting into the details of the stuff?
One of the things that we noticed is that some of them could fit into more than one category.
Exactly, that's why I said think conversation matters more, because these skills are not non-overlapping sets. They have a lot of overlap. Making sense of the problems, perseverance also include attending to precision, but also includes using your tools effectively. So definitely, I think that's a great observation. There is a lot of overlap. I develop these skills in an isolation. But the thing is, what makes this practice is a really, really strong practice skill. That's the point of this conversation. Once you're trying to see, for example, making sense of the problems and persevering, it has perseverance in it. That doesn't have in any of those, or monitoring your progress in it. So I think that individual aspects matter sometimes when we look at the students' performances, but great observation. Any other things to the whole class conversation? Okay, I opened Morgan, Menifee, and Elliott here. But just as an example, as I said, there is not really exactly true or false, but I'm going to also, just to see how I liked how they put their rationale. That's what I asked. And then they sorted their practices like this. And we didn't have time for all of it, but there's the practices. I'm going to share the keywords, okay? So that you see, let me share my key. And then you see what was this was from Genevieve Williams and Maggie McAdams. So you get to hear a lot from Genevieve's work. So tomorrow, get prepared. This was again from her previous coaching book, but this is the key, okay? Look at your work. Now you can look at your Jamboards and then see if you agree or disagree. But Brittany had a good point. There's a lot of overlaps. If this key doesn't match with your sorting, that's probably because of that overlap. But when you look at this sorting, is there any practice you want to bring to us, you want to discuss? Now you can look at the Jamboard and then look at this sorting. So make sense of the problems and persevere in solving them. The authors of this work put D into this category. Do you agree or not? Or do you agree? And then you might start seeing these components once you look at from this lens. But those practices look-fors are really important. That's why I gave those practices look-fors. Are you seeing any of the components and age to be considered as reason abstractly and quantitatively? Are there any questions? I'm just checking the chat box. The model with mathematics is most misunderstood. And Amy is saying that. And do you know what, Amy, you're right. Because model with mathematics has quite different forms, depending on being elementary, middle school, high school. In the elementary, modeling with mathematics might mean just using tools, representations, graphs. But in the actual mathematical sense, modeling mathematics is getting a real world data, real world problem, and turning into a mathematical modeling, mathematical equation. And I'm sure high school folks will agree with me that, the model. But in the elementary school, of course, you cannot expect the looking at the cell phone data and then creating a mathematical equation, right? So you want the words, pictures to describe that mathematics you see in the real world. But modeling with mathematics, you are taking a real world phenomenon and turning into mathematical representations. Any other things? Yes, Summer is saying MP4, 5, yes, 4 and 5 are sometimes mixed, use appropriate tools. That's the reason that I just said. And then 6 and 7 and 8, because they are very interrelated. Yes, Amy, none of the standards says fast. These are the practices. These all say that these skills. Good point.
So Funda, I want to have them circle back for a reflection moment, and that is, we all know these standards for mathematical practice, but I ask you as classroom practitioners, we're bringing this to the forefront because as the 92 of the best math teacher leaders in the state, how are these mathematical practices, culture, not just we're going to talk about them, how is this culture in your classroom? So I'm bringing it to the front because Funda's talking to us about this. We have to self-reflect in that Angela Duckworth thing. Where's our stretch? Where do we need to reflect? So thinking about that as Funda's bringing this to the front, because as I say, it's time to walk the walk and talk the talk, making sure that these are systemic in a culture in both your classroom, your school, and your district. So thinking about that.
Nice. Yes, the KKS does a great job in including this in a part of that. Kelly's point is really right. Please take think about in your own classrooms, what my students are not doing it. I see a lot of classroom teachers are giving the tools to their students, but this practice 5 says use appropriate tools strategically. And again, these are from kids' perspective. This practice standard doesn't say teachers are using tools strategically. When you look into your classroom, as you're observing, when the kids cannot solve the problem, are they walking out, trying to grab a tool that will help them solve problem? For example, I'm doing an area problem and I'm stuck. Oh, I can use geoboard. I'm going and then grabbing a geoboard to find the area of this irregular shape that I am facing with, or I am using a grid paper. But as a student, this is what I should be doing. This is what I should be seeing in my students. These are all from student perspectives. I'm reiterating the same thing. You are modeling them, but you need to see in your students. Okay, so I'm gonna move on, but this is just a conversation starter. This is one of our building blocks. That's why we have this in day 1, Monday. Okay, we will come back to these practices. Please look at those look fors. We will come back with different examples in different Zoom settings. We want to see a high school example, and that high school example is presented to elementary school so that they see how it works in different grade levels. Okay, I'm gonna skip a couple of slides because we are running a little bit low on time. I was so excited about Polya's work, but I think I'm not gonna do the Polya, how to solve problems. I'm gonna do, let me just show the book title. It's just, but I'm gonna go to the math talk because that's more important.
Linda, one thing that I want to say to you is that I can cut at the end. So you keep rolling along. We're really enjoying what you're doing. I'd say talk a little bit about the Polya because I think it's so foundational and institutional. And again, we're not doing it systemically. So you don't worry about the time.
Okay. All right.
Minutes.
I'll cut the examples, but yes, I'm going to just give the main idea. So George Polya is a mathematician who actually at the initially struggled with all the math facts, formulas that you need to memorize to be able to successfully do math. And then he persevered, and then he worked hard, and then finally he published his way of seeing mathematical engagement in a book called How to Solve It. This is where I took this version of the book, screenshot, because this is one of the first publications. You see $1.45. So it is very old publication, but it created this building blocks of solving mathematical problems. So in his book, he talks about 4 steps. And it's very fun, engaging, easy to understand. Sometimes mathematicians speak, you know, like out of different planet. It's not like that. You can easily dig into it, and there's mathematical problems and everything. It's a great book. But what he says is not different from the SMP one. Understand the problem. Remember our brain image, all those 4 different parts in the brain image. Understanding the problem, devising a plan, carried out in the plan, and looking back are all those 4 components. And then we are going to skip the red part. These are the questions he had for us. Do you understand all the words used in stating the problem? What are you asked to find or show? Can you restate the problem in your own words? This is what it means, understanding the problem. Okay, if you're having a hard time, can you think of a picture or a diagram that help you understand the problem? And is there enough information to find a solution? Maybe sometimes the problem is impossible to solve. You also try to look for what is given in the problem. And I want to give this very popular example of not sense making in kids. Robert Kompliski gives that example. They asked to the kids at the middle school, there is 15 sheep and 1 dog. How old is the shepherd? There's the problem they asked to the kids. And then many kids with different numbers, I don't exactly remember the numbers, many kids try to add the numbers, subtract the numbers, multiply the numbers without really saying that there is not enough information. Find the solution. A middle school kid coming with different operations to solve this problem without actually thinking, is there enough information to find a solution? Sense-making part is important. And what we are making the kids sometimes is lose that aspect of sense-making, especially that keyword strategy, underline the numbers and then the keywords. Sometimes kills the essence of the problem-solving activity. When we engage our kids in problem-solving activity, we want them to be engaged in problem-solving comprehensively, not just looking at the numbers to play with it, okay? So the second, and the brain image, I'm skipping that red part. I was gonna make you think a little bit graph theory problem, but we are skipping that part. I'm sure high school people are feeling sad not to deal with this problem. Okay, and then you are going to devise a solution. Are we allowing these different solution pathways? Guess and check is the most obvious one, right? Let's try guess and check, but that's not very mathematical sometimes. Can we look for a pattern? Can we make orderly lists? Can we draw a picture? Can we eliminate possibilities? Or can we solve a simpler problem? I use this solving a simpler problem a lot with elementary kids, middle school kids, because especially middle school teachers, you'll understand what I am saying. When you pose a word problem with decimal numbers in it, do you see your kids shut down? I see a lot of kids shut down when there's, for example, 1.23 plus 3.44, all those decimal numbers, and a word problem makes kids sometimes feel frustrated. What I tell them is, just forget about the numbers. Make sense of the problem. And you use more simpler numbers instead of complicated decimal numbers. What is a strategy that you can use to solve this problem? That is what it means, solve a simpler problem. Sometimes you make it easier numbers, sometimes you make it easier steps, and then you figure out first step and move on to the next step. Use a model, consider special case, or can I use backward reasoning? All these are parts of devising a plan, and then carry out the plan. But carrying out the plan is not just carrying out the solution. Can you clearly see that the steps are correct? And can you prove that's correct? Reasoning comes into carrying out the steps. Is each my step is correct is part of that reasoning, and finally looking back. And I'm telling you from my experience with the kids, and I have a lot of experience with the kids, I'm sure you have more than I do, but I'm just saying the limited experience I have, many kids don't go and look back because they are impatient, one thing, but the other most important thing they are missing is they don't have another pathway to look back. If I use a different method to check my work, like you're doing a decimal multiplication, you use your algorithm. Oh, let me use my sense making. Is this within the scale, that interval that I'm gonna get? That is how you're checking your work. Using another strategy with the elementary kids, if they did a subtraction problem, can I check my work by using an addition reasoning? Subtraction and addition are inverse operations, so that kids need to be able to check their work by using both reasoning. I don't have in my repertoire a high school example. Please feel free to jump, but looking back means having another way, examining the each step, but can I see if, can I derive the same solution if I solve it differently? Is part of that looking back. I think this is a very fun read if you have time, and it's not an expensive book, but it really helps us to understand what does this first practice mean. First practice doesn't mean just you give them word problem and they solve them successfully. Okay? All right, so these are our look fors. Please carry them, and you have a homework for tonight. All right, so this is one of my favorite videos of a classroom, and it is from like historical ages. Remember in the social, I said this work goes back to 40 years. You'll see what I mean when you look at this video. It's an old video of Deborah Ball, one of the key mathematics educators teaching actually a classroom. And what you're gonna do in this homework is, you're gonna watch the video and use the SMPs, this look fors, mathematical practices look fors, to interpret the student engagement. For example, you can say on minute 2, I saw students were using practice 3. On minute 4, and this is my evidence. Again, we are not making our judgments based on our hunch. We have this expert view. Okay, expert me view means that's what we are trying to develop. Bring the evidence for your conclusions. If you are seeing MP3 in this video, what is your evidence, supporting evidence? This practice will help you, show you how you engage with other teachers in your school, how you can help them get better. Also, how this perspective can help you get better. You need to always use the evidence to assess things. Okay, so do any questions about the homework?
And I told them that we'll send a follow-up email with regards to in there. Many of you copied and pasted that. So what you're finding is that you're having these tabs that are open, that when our virtual conference is over today, you'll still have that as a trail, but I will also send you an email so that we're clear about what you need to do tonight.
Okay, so we are going to shift gears again, going back to the instructional triangle, because this is the basis of everything, the learning happens. So we started with the student practices. We are going to dig deep into the teacher practices, but I'm going to talk about discourse, all these triangle interactions. So having this conversation, students are thinking, students are productively engaging. Let's think about what we want to see in a classroom. I'm not going to reinvent the wheel, you have you reinvent the wheel, because we already have a tool, a framework to look at what a productive mathematical talk community might look like. I'm going to share this file with you. Okay, this is a framework called Math Talk Framework, but this is part of Principle to Action book. So what I want you to do is open your books, page, what is the page number? Is lost, 32. 32, page 32. Please open your Principles to Action book, page 32. You'll see a rubric, okay? You'll see this rubric with, on the left-hand corner, on the book version, level 0, level 1, level 2, level 3 in your books. In my version, the levels are here. I'm gonna share this version with you as well. And then the columns has titles: teacher's role, questioning, explaining mathematical thinking, source of mathematical ideas, mathematical representation, and building a responsibility within a community. Okay, I'm going to explain this framework a little bit. When we talk about effective classroom discourse, sometimes some frameworks just focus on what the teacher does. I like this framework because this framework focuses on what the teacher does and what the student does, especially in this version. Let me just send the file to you so that you can access to this version as well. Let's just find from my desktop. Yes, here. Okay. In the chat box, you should have access to the one that I am presenting to you. The Principle to Action book is slightly different, but it is the same framework. It's just repackaged differently. The chat box, there's a question, will we have access to the chat box afterward? I think what we can do better, we can put all the materials, the links that we provided in a separate email so that you have access to the links that we provided, Jamboard link, this file, and the homework assignment link so that you can see all of them together. That's what I think I can do easily. Okay. You're welcome. So I'm just going to describe this. I'm going to put you in a group. Do we have time for groups, Kelly? Okay, just because this
we
is
do.
Okay.
We do. You're only at 11:25 and we have till 11:45 or so.
Okay, okay.
You're
This
good.
is very important because this is the part that you are going to grow yourselves. Okay, we are going to have a self-reflection and we are going to have maybe you can use this framework to look at each other's classroom. Remember in the interview we asked, are you willing to open up your classroom doors? Meaning, are you willing to get the critical feedback? This is what we meant to say. We will be our other critical person to our friends. And then we will use some structured observation protocols like this to assess the quality of the lessons. This is for our own growth and for other teachers' growth. Look at this questioning component. What we want to see shift, see the shift languages here. Genevieve Williams' book has shift language. We want to shift from teacher as a questioner to students and teachers as questioning. Imagine yourself in your own classroom. Are you the only person asking questions? Besides, students are asking, when is the break? Do you have a pencil? You know, the students' questions don't go beyond that sometimes. So are you the only questioner or are you hearing your students asking questions to each other, not just you? So this is level 0 means teacher is the only questioning. Short and frequent questions function to keep students listening and paying attention to the teacher. Like, are you with me? Do you agree? Yes. What is it? 5. So these kind of short cycles of questions, like funneling pattern of questions, is level 0. And students give short answer. Let's look at level 1. Teachers' big questions begin to focus on student thinking, asking why questions. How do you think? What is another way? And then teacher begins to ask follow-up questions about student thinking. You're listening to the students now. You don't have your own agenda. I am at level 1 questioning component. This is questioning component. And then what the students are doing. As a student answers a question, other students listen passively or wait for their turn. Okay, these are level 0 and level 1. Do you know what? I sometimes reflect on my own teaching by using this, and then I find the maximum I find myself is level 1. Are you curious about level 2? What I'm saying is don't get disappointed in yourselves if you feel like you are more living on level 1 land or even level 0 sometimes. This is a progress, it's still learning. Let's look at questioning component level 2. Level 2 is teacher continues to ask probing questions and ask more upon on the questions, but she also facilitates student-to-student questions like, Kelly, do you have a question to your friends? And then having the student conversation ongoing. But level 3 is the perfect level. Students are just facilitating conversation. You are listening and guiding them. The student talk is student initiated, not dependent on the teacher. That's the ideal case. Okay, so don't be hard on yourself as you're doing self-reflection. That's where we want to get at from our classrooms. But the thing that I like about this rubric, it's very clear, actionable items, and it clearly distinguishes what you expect the teacher to do and what the student to do. And out of all these 4 components, this was about questioning, explaining mathematical thinking. This is mathematical representation, source of mathematical ideas, and this is responsibility for learning. Okay. Any questions about this rubric? We are going to have another interactive time by using this rubric, but any questions in general about this rubric?
So Funda, one of the questions that's emerging from our teacher leaders is this idea of we had this down in a pretty good role when we were in our classrooms, when we were face-to-face, when everybody was there, but how do we do it online? So the one thing that I will challenge you guys to say is that we've flipped it really fast as a nation. We had to go online very quickly. So as you go in to discuss this, how about coming out with some ideas about how are we going to do this? Because this is one of those persevere sort of things. What about wait time? You know, how might we, help the students? What might be some tools that we could use to increase that collaboration with students? I can already see a couple suggestions going in there, but it's up to us to kind of think about some of the problem solving with regards to this. So great question, and I love it when we have it out there. So let's think about how we're going to incorporate the new normal of the school year in addition to face-to-face.
And I didn't use Flipgrid, so I'm going to look at the Flipgrid now after this meeting, so that we all need to learn the good things on an online platform. So that's it. But yes, it's about perseverance. I think that's what Dee said, is about flexibility. And Kel said perseverance. So we need to still stay on our norms. This is our ethic. This is our norm. And we still want to sustain this level of conversation. And I think Nikki said that small group Zoom with elementary kids, 20 kids in the same Zoom meeting might be hard to really create the math talk, but about 5 students at a time and different meetings, so we can get.
So Funda, can I circle back to what do you want us to do? So Pam, we're going to go back into our groups. We're going to go into our groups, and
we are going to watch a video. I'm going to copy, and then please, before going into your groups, later, let me see. This is not okay. I think I did something wrong in here. Copy and paste. I'm going to copy and paste again. So I'm going to copy and paste, and please take a picture of this screen so that you have this. Okay, so click on this link before going into your groups. Yes, Cindy, I agree. Students without internet, that will be really hard to deal with. Make sure, please open the video, because sometimes this is from Take Action and CTM book, a video, it might need password. If it needs password, I'm going to type the password as well. We checked it in different, Pam didn't have, and it looked like it's working, but I'm just going to make sure I'm typing password if it asks password. Okay, so you're going to watch this clip, and first of all, the first task is get yourself familiarized with this framework, okay? And then watch the video clip and discuss about what you see. How do you rate this classroom? You are like an external observer. You're coming into this classroom and you're assessing this teacher's performance. This is what you're sometimes gonna do as a district leader. So we are practicing our way of evaluating a mathematics classroom as a leader. Okay, any questions?
So Funda, when I get in the room, somebody in the room is going to share their screen, which we all have that capacity to do that. So it's going to share the screen, and we're going to collaboratively look for the framework.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Yes.
Beautiful. All right, Pam.
Yes, we can start it now.
Yep, she already did. Yep.
Thank
All right.
you.
Head into your rooms. Funda, I think we're all back.
Good. Okay. So what I want to, the number is 51, so maybe a couple people might be missing. Oh, it's increasing. Okay, yes. So what I'm gonna do is, I know you were talking about yourselves as you were doing this, and then already started thinking about yourselves, but I will just give you a brief self-reflection time, and that will be our final thing from me today, and then we'll switch gears to the other things. But I want you to do, what is my takeaway from this observation protocol, math talk? Not 5 minutes, we're not taking 5 minutes, we're just taking 1 minute now. We will keep thinking, we will keep self-reflecting though. But think about what is your My Classroom Math Talk stars are. If you use that Math Talk framework, what am I really good at? What I'm star for? And then what are the opportunities for you to grow? Okay, but you need to use the math talk and try to write down a couple instances from your classroom. And remember what I said about evidence-based assessment. Even your self-reflection moment should be evidence-based. If you are considering yourself level 2, what is your evidence from your own classroom? Okay, let's just take a couple minutes and then, yes, we'll switch gears. Is there anything, anyone? I know we are brave. We are in a group that is trustworthy, but is there anything that you want to share from your this brief little self-reflective moment, that is there something that you want to grow more, or is there something that you really feel you're doing really well?
In my classroom, my students do a really good job of using of explaining their thinking and communicating with their peers through think, pair, shares.
Nice.
But one area where we can grow a lot, I see, is them taking the time to self-reflect and to independently communicate their thinking and also correct each other.
Nice. Yeah. And that's really important. That's missing in many of the classrooms, Brittany. It's not just your classroom, I feel like.
Well, I'm gonna jump in. I've kind of set back, but I teach high school, and for years I've always tried to, try to get questions to my kids to get them to start talking to each other. Well, last couple of years, I've tried to kind of make them come in and literally they teach the class at times.
Yes.
So I have a game called the mime game. And what I do is when I get up at the board, sometimes there'll be a topic up there like polynomials. And I literally have led them for like a day or two of just the old style teaching where you stand up there and you teach. And I keep giving hints as to you need to be doing your thing, asking questions to each other. So they come in there on, say, the third day, and I literally am just sitting up there and don't say anything. Well, the key is that they understand there's assessments coming up, so they're wanting to know how to do things. So I have them start discussing, talking, and then the next thing you know, they are trying to, correct each other, find out more about what they're thinking. They'll even go to the board and actually take over and do things. But it's really hard for, I don't know exactly why it is, but for our high school kids in my area, for them to buy in to the fact that they can be just as good of educators as I can be sometimes. Because at times I tell them, thanks for that idea. I'm going to use it next year if you don't mind. So I try to facilitate. I kind of look at myself as a one. When it really comes down to it, when I start looking through all of those and trying to approach a 2, and I'm thinking, man, can I ever get to that point to where I'm at a 3? Well, that's the goal. Yeah. And, like I say, I try things differently all the time, but I come up with doing that just on a kind of like on a not wanting them to ask questions all the time, wanting them to talk to each other.
So I want to highlight that that's Greg Longworth in Harlan County. So again, far eastern Kentucky. Greg got kicked out and got back in, but he's Harlan County. So you high school folks, I want you to connect with each other.
Somebody's from Harlan. Somebody's speaking at Jefferson, but she says that she's from Harlan.
Yeah. Yay.
Jane is talking about Kagan structure. Yes, I think there's really good questioning strategies from the Kagan. Nice. Okay, I think Kelly, is it time for a break maybe?
I think it is time. It is time for a break. And Funda, you couldn't have done a better job with our time because it's 11:50. So I'm going to let us have a 10-minute break. Let's come back right at 12 o'clock. Go get your lunch. Feel free that if this is your time you need to feed your soul, you just bring that lunch right here to the video camera. I'd like to see what it is. Tell me what yummy things you're eating. Or if you're waiting, I loved it that as Erin was on video, I could hear those wonderful children of hers, those boys of hers in the background. And so check in with your kids. See you back right at noon. All righty, fantastic. I see that everyone is back, taking a look at thinking about how the strengths that we have in our district, and then being real. I was in there hanging out with the Callaway girls and talking about the fact that even though they have 3 elementary, 1 middle, and 1 high, you would think that that would mean that everybody's on the same page. You don't have that many. Imagine Jefferson, if you only had 3 elementary, 1 middle, and 1 high. They've got that within a square mile in Louisville. But the truth of the matter is it can be just as distant because there are just this mindset. But I do have to tell you that I think maybe where we have the advantage of this virtual time that we've been forced into. And so now we have this opportunity to invite folks from other schools and break down those barriers and those walls. So I'd love for a couple of you guys to share some of the conversation that you had in your room.
And Kelly, can I add one thing real fast?
Absolutely.
Just like you were talking about how there's elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools within a square mile of each other. The reality is like I think about myself at Doss. I have kids that get bused from one end of the county to the other for elementary to middle, and then they come to me in high school. So it's not like I'm seeing kids that are right next door at Trunnill to me that are in the same building. Those kids I hardly ever see. So we are just as distant as some of the outer county schools.
So think about some of those positive things that you heard about your schools that you shared, and again, maybe some of those opportunities you have.
Kelly, in Round County, some of the things that we talked about as strengths would be our relationships with our peers, our other teachers in our school, but also our kids, just that feeling of family. And we have some really good teachers. But then we talked about the negatives. The pressure of testing causes our teachers to not allow our kids to think. And we drive more toward algorithm and answers rather than true understanding because we want them to get the right answer so that our scores will be higher. So those things, we would like to work on giving our teachers back some of that confidence to let our kids think and to back off a little bit and give that responsibility back to the kids because eventually, that's going to be where your scores grow. It's, they're going to have that understanding that follows them all throughout. And something Round County is doing this year that I'm so excited about is we are going to have a district. All of our elementary schools are going to be doing the same math program, which is hilarious to me that that's something that's new. Because you would think that the county has a district, but they've kind of let their schools choose. And so having that common curriculum, I think, is going to be awesome for elementary, but also then middle school, because the kids are going to be on the same page once we hand them over to the middle school.
Fantastic. Yeah, fantastic. And notice how she said that. It's funny that we would all have the same curriculum, but that's a outcropping of site-based management in the state of Kentucky. So finally kind of came together and said, no, let's all do the same thing. Guess what? Our kids are very transient. So how about if we all had the same, materials? I loved the positiveness there. Yeah, relationships matter. Others? Someone else sharing?
I don't care to speak. In Boyle County, Holly and I were discussing kind of broad goal, P through 12, how do we make our students better thinkers? And Nikki kind of alluded to that. But that's a kind of a question that I think transcends any age. And again, we do get bogged down with, okay, prep's coming up. At Boyle, we have common assessments and a common curriculum and standards we've designed district-wide. So we don't really have that barrier. But how do we, shifting the thinking from what do we need the students to learn based on the curriculum and getting the answer to how can we change just by the questions we ask? How are we fostering discussion? How are we fostering discussions? Holly and I said we wanted to make math fun and relatable and relevant. And then on a more pragmatic level, how do we get buy-in from our peers? And I think that both of us have great relationships with our teaching communities within our district. But really, how do we foster those conversations within our buildings and within the district to get the buy-in? But I do think it is shifting focus from how we are doing little things like questioning instead of like a huge, like, oh man, we are changing all the curriculum. You have to do X, Y, Z, this and that. But really just kind of gently, kind of from the grassroots, how we're doing it here, can we just have those great conversations that imply positive change?
So I think what we're doing for you is modeling this idea of grassroots and organic. We started with 90 of the best teachers. We are actually touching as many as 40 and 50 districts out of 172, but we really do believe that kind of like attracts like, and so like-minded folks that are willing to make a difference. The other thing that I will say, the bird opens the seed one peck at a time, right? Little peck, 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 little tiny, little tiny, little tiny, little tiny. And then all of a sudden that will make a difference. I do want to bring some honor. Jane, do I remember correctly? You're my special education expert.
Correct.
All right. So about that. yeah. No. Tell a little bit about that, because these purists, we've got a lot of purist mathematics folks here, but you would not believe the beautiful interview that Jane did. But Jane, why is it that you're so passionate just about the math education? Because you're going to change math education from the special education lens. Yeah. Why Kentucky Math Teacher Leaders?
Well, I was a math major in college, so I have that background. That's my true love, was math first, right. and then special ed was my door into education, but it's also very much a passion of mine, and how those two avenues connect is a really interesting place for me. I tell people, and I think I said this in my interview, I'm a math teacher who does a lot of special ed paperwork, but I have it's just a unique opportunity and lens to see all different types of learners every day. And where I co-teach, I get to see lots of different things. I have to be very creative with strategies we use, and I'm very fortunate that I get to push into 2 through 5 usually, but I also tutor up through high school and college. So it's just a really unique perspective and scope that I get to see, and a lot, but I have the special ed experience as well that not everyone has. So it's a cool opportunity that I get.
So I always like to highlight those expertise that many of you have. Like I said, if you read each other's bio, you saw what a beautiful group that we do have. So along our journey, so as we're talking about this, moving along our journey, thinking about what are the individual positive things that are at my school and what are some of my areas of opportunity, then begins to bubble up this cohesive idea of where might our district transformation happen. So I'm going to go back to share my screen. I'm going to travel into the next section, because we really are going to spend some quality time in our groups talking about district transformation. So you know what the strengths are, you know what some of the changes are that you want to make for yourself and maybe for your school. So you kind of see how I'm developing this. We're going to go back to Angela Duckworth, who's going to talk to us yet again about this pyramid of goals. This is one that I pushed out earlier in the weeks. The good news, it's only like a minute and a half, because I felt like it was so important that we circle back to it, because I want you to begin thinking about this ultimate concern. I loved it that she used that term, ultimate concern.
One thing
thing that makes me especially interested in human goals is that they exist in a hierarchy. I mean, picture a pyramid in your head of goals. From the very bottom level, low-level goals, I would call them. They're very specific, concrete things on your to-do list. To be gritty is not to hold steadfast to your to-do list goals. You know, call that person back, write that email. To be gritty is to have a well-organized and aligned pyramid of goals where the low-level goals serve mid-level goals and the mid-level goals serve higher-level goals. Ultimately, you have what some scientists like to call an ultimate concern. And that goal is the one that you're tenacious about, that you are stubborn about, that you wake up in the morning and go to bed at night aligned to, even if you have to switch out one of the low-level goals because it's just not working. Returning again and again to this question, well, what is my top-level goal? Like, what am I all about? Is a tremendously powerful exercise. You should ask yourself to keep coming back until you get to a phrase of, I would recommend 10 words or fewer, that says, this is who I am. And every small decision adds up to furthering this goal, which is my ultimate concern. When I remember what my top-level goal is, it helps me make decisions all the way down the tree. My top-level goal is to help children thrive using psychological science. And every small decision that I need to make today or tomorrow, if I put it to that test, does this or does this not further that top-level goal, I completely have my priorities in order.
We always love that Angela gives us I think what she does such a good job is she gives us those visual reminders of how we should be thinking. So you are getting ready to go into your groups and really hammer out what's going to be your district ultimate concern. Watch my hands. You are going to have a district ultimate level concern, and then you're going to choose. Are Brittany, Summer, Sean, and my Jefferson crew, are they going to work to somewhat individually and have and feed their passion, or do they want to try to have one umbrella that it's discussion? What I want you to know is that there's really not there's not one way that's better than the other. What is the most important thing is in 1 year, when we come back together for the summer conference for Kentucky Math Teacher Leaders, we look in the review mirror and Sean says, I've made a difference. Nikki says, I've made a difference. Karima says, I've made a difference. Amy says, I've made a difference in Bardstown because my ultimate concern, I've made some level goals, I've fed my passion, I've persevered, and I've made some difference. I'm going to put a link in there for a Google Doc where all you're really going to do today in the next 30 minutes, actually I'm going to watch the time, next 20 minutes, and I am going to leave you in the room for 20 minutes, is to really hammer out that ultimate concern. It could be that Jefferson says there's 3 ultimate concerns because Summer's going to be working on this one, Karima's going to be working on that one, or it could be that you have 1 ultimate concern because your mid-level and your low-level goals are obviously going to be different based on the work and the audience for which you're going to be working. But you may be Callaway, you may be my Callaway girls, and you may say, girl, we're gonna put ourselves together and we are gonna have an ultimate concern, and we're gonna have some mid-level and low-level goals, and we're gonna do a district, there's gonna be a district group working on this. All right, let me give you the Google Doc. Nothing special about it, just something pretty straightforward. I'm going to put it in the chat, and you'll have access to that, and everyone can type in it and we'll be in there simultaneously. Might want to ignore it to begin with because you just want to have those good, vibrant conversations and then circle back to it in the end. I have 12:29. I'm going to pull us back together at 12:49. All right, enjoy the district conversations that you're going to have in your team. What is it that you guys are going to do to transform your district? Back can. So welcome back. What a good conversation you guys had. And I will give value to the fact that this is hard, right? Trying to think about what are you going to have passion about? What can you really make a difference in your district with regards to? But today on day one is really the day to start thinking about it. So I do want to say that I'm going to be a good steward of our time and mention to you all that just because we stop at 1 o'clock doesn't mean that you guys couldn't come back together as a team for 30 minutes or so to talk in the morning before we get started, to talk after this sometime. If you feel like that conversation is still lingering out there, this idea needs to solidify in 24 hours. So about 24 hours from now, you kind of need to have your district transformation and you need to be thinking about those low-level goals. But I think we've got a great start on it. So I'm going to go back to share my screen and have us share out for just a minute. Would someone like to kind of share one of their goals that they're really beginning to think about? And actually, I'm going to reverse stop sharing because we see each other better when we're this way. A team want to share?
I mean, for us, and you know, we are not a district team. We're a regional team representing 4 districts. So our task is a little bit different than some. One of the things that seems to be an overarching issue for us is just general communication within grade levels and within buildings. So we talked about improving communication about math instruction specific to the SMPs and the MPs.
Beautiful, Amy. See, here's what we thought at KCM. We felt like that when we got you guys together, that you would be able to know that there probably is some universal concern, right? And I bet if you were, even if you weren't with someone in your region, I bet if I put you with someone across Kentucky, it'd be about the same thing. So beautiful, Amy. That's how it falls out. Then how you do your goals and your low-level goals and your mid-level goals, Amy, you do it for what works for Bardstown, and the others do it for what works for their districts. Another group to share?
Okay, this is for the Lecture Harlan group. We kind of said the same thing. We see that there's a lack of like vertical from the elementary level to the middle school to the high school level with the math standards. So we thought about the community between the different levels. And we're also kind of looking at, because we are such a high poverty, generational poverty area, how we can build that equity in with our low poverty, special ed population.
Beautiful, beautiful. So you guys are beginning to roll along. So I think I can hear the makings of some really good ultimate concerns. You will be able to finalize your information on this Google document. So even if you didn't have a time to put it on there yet, kind of circle back to it maybe later this afternoon for us to be able to take a look at. So I love to do a summarizer, and it's called POMS, P-O-M-S. That's the point of most significance. We took time today to look at the research. Funda brought us research, and how long had she said it's been going on? I mean, guys, we've been at this for almost, I think one of the words she used was 40 years.
40 years. CGI started 1975 or 80s. So
Funda, that was forever ago. Why are we still having to talk about it?
That's what I'm saying.
We still have to talk about it. Why is it still not in the classroom right beside you? Okay. We did a little team building. And so one of the things that may be your point of most significance is that you are feeling great about the folks in this cohort, in your team, that you feel like they would be there to support you. And, or maybe your point of most significance is you're beginning to think about this district ultimate concern. So in the chat box, I would love for you to do your, I'd love for you to do your point of most significance. So if you will, tell me what is your point of most significance in the chat box. This is one of my favorite things, and it starts rolling in like thunder. Got it. Katie says, you know what? I'm just a person in my district, but I really can make a difference. You're right. That is we say that's how it's only ever, change has only ever occurred because one person believed that they could. Yay. Amy says, I'm feeling like I have each other. Multiple efforts. So Sheila from saying I've got multiple. Lisa from Walton Verona, it sounds as though Walton Verona's, this vertical alignment, these vertical conversations are needed. So it looks like you guys may be some vehicles for some vertical conversations. How funny. Do you see how important it was to us at KCM to have people at elementary, middle, and high putting you together? When you've got a regional team, you may not realize this, but we very strategically put you together for elementary, middle, and high so that you'd be together as a team to see it. Yeah, Bethany says in a time that's so that's of uncertainty, it's refreshing and energizing to be with us. I agree. I agree. This really, I was looking so forward to having this launch. Stephanie Lyons is giving a shout out to her friend. So you can see that in there. Jessica's right. This year's going to be challenging, you all. We're not downplaying that at all. There is nothing about this that we are sweeping under the rug. It's going to be hard. The good news is that we do have each other, and we have this team to come back together to stoke our fire and to refresh us as we are beginning to think about transforming and making that systemic change. I do want to remind you that Funda's given us a little bit of homework. She's going to ask you to watch that video. We will remind you that she had it in the chat. Maybe I should go put it in there. Let me see if I can't grab that one more time. And I'm going to put that for you one more time in the. And I send you an email, Kelly, with the links so that if you want to forward that email to the people. That'll be great. I'll do that both. So yep, Funda, send it to me right now. There it goes. Look, she was ahead of the game. I'll forward that email to our cohort so that you can have it to take a look at. I also put it in there, and the question is, please take a look at that in terms of the standards for mathematical practice. Okay. So from KCM and the Kentucky Math Teacher Leaders, we want to say thank you for being here with us this afternoon. And we look forward to seeing you guys again tomorrow. Please be reminded that tomorrow is extra busy also, like it was today, but tomorrow to begin our day, Funda is going to take us back to the math teaching practices. So it may be that opportunity for you to peruse back in your book, okay? And Jenny Bay Williams will be with us at 10 o'clock. To me, that's like a rock star showing up in here. When she logs in at 10 till 10, it's over because we'll all be like, oh, there she is. She is the co-author of our book, and she's going to be talking to us about that Leading for Mathematical Proficiency framework. That framework needs to be in our soul as Kentucky Math Teacher Leaders, growing ourselves. That's not something that we're looking to scale at your school. We're using that framework to grow our understanding. I want to give a shout out to Tonda and Julie and Belle. Belle put together a great presentation. We're going to do a little content. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking about the vertical alignment with regards to the standards, the fluency standards, so that we can see that. Remember, we're growing our content. And then at the end of the day, we're going to circle back to our district goals. So I need you to really think about, because you're not going to have enough time in the afternoon to really finalize those district goals. And I would feel better if we left at the end of our 2-day session that I was pretty sure that I knew what your passion and your perseverance was going to be and what you were going to work on for the next 1 year. That when we look in the rearview mirror, you said you were going to make a difference in blank and that the difference was made. So to finalize, have a couple of you mention about what you loved about today. We've got 1 minute. What did you love about today? Maybe somebody who hasn't said anything yet.
Loved being able to, meet the Jefferson team and kind of collaborate with them. I think they have some great ideas, and I'm really looking forward to learning more from them.
I'll let someone else.
I think it's allowed our Walton Verona team to meet and talk about what needs to happen, vertically. The nice thing is we have a 3rd, a 4th, and a 5th grade teacher. And so it's a great group to be able to see those gaps or those holes that need to be filled. So
beautiful, Misty. And one more.
I know this is my 3rd year in teaching, and I kind of fell into that weird gap of no K-tip, and then now we go on to COVID-19 for my 2nd year, and now this 3rd year is kind of up in the air as well. And so, to top it all off, I'm in a very, very small independent district. It's me and one other 5th grade teacher, and so to have 90 some people in a cohort to be able to bounce ideas off and receive feedback is something that's really awesome. And also, as a short little reminder of being able to connect back to people actually from college. Miss Bethany Henry's in our cohort here, and she was actually my first observation experience through Morehead State was under her for a semester. So to be able to reconnect with her was really cool as well.
That's awesome. Trenton, you give the perfect example of why we didn't put some exact specifications about what this cohort needed to be. You and Mike Thomas are in a very small independent district, and so that's the beauty of it. Is you're the antithesis of my Jefferson, yet in terms of shifts, you have to shift entire people to get an entire grade level. And that might be harder than my friends in Jefferson trying to shift elementary. So we're all in it at different times, but we want to invest. We appreciate that the independent districts, we've got a lot of them represented. We really think we can make a big difference. So you're right, you got a lot of new friends. From the KCM, from Funda, any last words?
I felt today was very dynamic. There was a lot of, we bounced off a lot of ideas together, and it is just a start. I think sometimes I feel like there might be some anxiety. So this task is big. Yes, it's big. It will require a lot of efforts, but I really like the graph Kelly shared with us, that 3 levels of graph, that we have this ultimate goal, but the ultimate goal is a big goal. You'll always come back, and we'll have our little goals hopefully set up. Those are actionable items, and we will accomplish those. I think, but everybody is so motivated and ready to go, which is a great, I think, thing, right? That's what we want to see.
So you're with friends. It was a wonderful time, and I'll see you again tomorrow. All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.